Hey, what's up? Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks for watching the video. There's a lot been going on over the last few days, and I guess what I'm most amazed by is, I guess, a mix of two things. And they're basically two sides of the same coin, but it's Donald Trump's ability to be Teflon and the Democrats and the mainstream media's ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Maxine Waters and the entire mainstream media has basically been losing their minds over the last week. Maxine Waters, she didn't go full Peter Fonda level, but she was basically encouraging people to harass members of Donald Trump's cabinet if they see them in public. It wasn't exactly clear whether she crossed the line into actually threatening them, but she basically said if you see them at a restaurant or a gas station or something like that, to gather around and kind of, I don't know, intimidate them, make them leave. Anyway, it's pretty amazing. It could not, I couldn't imagine anything that would help Donald Trump more than this stuff. It's really amazing. It's almost like the mainstream media and the Democrats and Hillary Clinton are working for Donald Trump's reelection effort. If they were, I don't think they could be doing a much better job. So it's been true, like, since Donald Trump announced he was running for president, the entire time I didn't, certainly at the beginning, I didn't take him very seriously. I didn't think he had any real chance of winning. But as I was proved wrong over and over again, I kind of adjusted the way I was looking at things and started taking him a bit more seriously. But it seems like every time someone attempts to take him down, he's able to flip the script on them and turn it around on them. And then it's like the what was it? Michelle Obama, I think, coined the term, and the Democrats really liked it. They said, when they go low, we go high. And this is kind of their plan. But then every time Donald Trump goes low, they end up going low, and then they're both low, and Donald Trump's better at that. So it kind of reminds me of like when Marco Rubio made the little dick joke about Donald Trump, and that was it. That was it for him. Once he did that, it was like, you're done. You're Donald Trump now, and you're not as good at being Donald Trump as Donald Trump, so you're finished. And that's the same thing when Maxine Waters, it's like, I remember for months the Democrat strategy was to talk about how dangerous the Donald Trump supporters were, and like, oh, look at this, there's violence at Donald Trump's rallies. Remember when that was a big thing? And now you have the Democrats just openly basically encouraging the same thing. It's incredibly strange. And I really thought that this separating parents from children thing, like, I was like, okay, they found their issue. This is going to be really good for the Democrats in the midterms. I mean, this tugs on the heartstrings, and anybody who looks at this would probably be against it. They'd have to think there's got to be a more humane way that we can deal with immigration than this. But it looks like Donald Trump has out-Trumped them again. So you have the entire mainstream media flipping out, the Democrats going crazy. The mainstream media is running images that are fake, straight up fake images. This picture of the little girl that we were talking about last week that was all over MSNBC, all over CNN. It was the cover of Time magazine. Remember, if you saw the image of Donald Trump standing over this little 2-3-year-old girl who's crying? Well, turns out that had nothing to do with Donald Trump's foreign policy, border policy. This wasn't a child who was separated from her mother. This was something that happened years ago. The family wasn't separated. It was probably under the Obama administration, of course. Maxine Waters and the mainstream media weren't making Nazi comparisons when Obama was separating families from their children. And now their defense is like that the numbers are up. So that's the line. Like, I guess it's okay to separate children from their parents, but you can't do it a lot. Ooh, man, that argument is getting a lot weaker. And I'll tell you, the thing that people notice, like most people who vote for Donald Trump or who voted for Hillary Clinton, or just the vast majority of people, they're not like policy experts. They don't sit around and read books and books and books about like fiscal policy and monetary policy and war and peace. And and that's not like an insult to them. It's like they've got more important things to do. They've got jobs and families and lives to lead. So they don't have time to do that. But people vote on kind of instinctual perceptions. And a lot of times they're misled, but sometimes they're right, and sometimes they nail it. And the thing is that basically everyone has picked up that the Democrats and the mainstream media don't really care about these kids. They care about ruining Donald Trump. And this is obvious. If the mainstream media really cared about kids being separated from their families, they would have been outraged through the Obama years. But they weren't. And they weren't even outraged about this when it was going on at lower numbers in the beginning of Trump's administration. It was only after all of their other issues that they thought were going to be their midterm issues, the number one being the Mueller investigation, which I think as they get closer and closer to the midterms, they're realizing we really haven't gotten anything out of that. We yapped on and on and on about Russian collusion. This was like literally probably took up 90% of the mainstream media's airtime for the first year of Donald Trump's presidency. Oh, and now we're getting to midterms and we've got nothing. And really the only thing that's come out of that is made the Democrats look bad, and the FBI and the CIA and the NSA made all those guys look bad, like they had bias against Trump. So the mainstream media will do anything they can to ruin Donald Trump. They'll use they'll use fake images to try to tug at your heartstrings. And man, it's all this stuff is coming out. And then of course, you have these people like Maxine Waters. Like it's like Hillary Clinton coming around. It's like I said, it almost makes me entertain the ideas of some type of conspiracy theory, because it's like, are you guys really this stupid that you don't see that you're helping Donald Trump, that you're working to lose the midterms and to get this guy reelected? I don't know. I don't know how that could go over. It's like Hillary Clinton with that "What Happened" book. Do you really? Who do you think you're helping? Who do you think you're helping by blaming everyone else except yourself for this stuff? I mean, it's insane. So Maxine Waters, by the way, this is a woman who lives in a rich white district and represents a poor black district. Maxine Waters lives in a house that I think is worth $4.5 million mansion or something like that, somewhere in that ballpark. And by the way, it's kind of shady. No one actually knows where she got this money from, because she's basically just been a congresswoman for like a couple decades now. So no one knows where she got this money from. But this is the thing. This is kind of like the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. You get to be this advocate for the poor while you live like the rich. So you get to be the 1%, but you can also absolve yourself of any of the guilt that you might feel by constantly railing against the 1%. And it's kind of crazy that this is the issue that gets so much attention, while we separate families in the drug war. We separate our own citizens from their families constantly. And to give credit to Maxine Waters, she has been on the right side of the war on drugs. But man, it's pretty amazing that you represent a district full of poor black people who are constantly getting separated from their families, and you're out there now. You have the level of outrage to say we have to start, like intimidating Donald Trump's cabinet members. I mean, Barack Obama was in there for 8 years, and people continued to get separated from their families in the country and at the border. But that never kind of generated the outrage. Anyway, all of this. My point is not to defend Donald Trump. I mean, I think the zero tolerance policy was really bad. I think this is a really inhumane way to police the border. The irony, I guess, is that Donald Trump's idea of building a wall would actually be like the most humanitarian way, probably, if you actually wanted to cut down on immigration. It's like, yeah, build a wall and hopefully people can't get through, and then you don't have to go into the business of like rounding people up and all this crazy stuff. But the only way to actually avoid any humanitarian issues, the only way to not have government agents rounding people up, would be to have an open border policy. And the only way to have an open border policy and not have it be a disaster is, well, immediately what you'd have to do is end the welfare state and end the war on drugs. And so if you end the welfare state, okay, well, now you don't incentivize people to come here and not work, or at least you don't allow people to come here and not work. You don't put a burden on the taxpayers. Okay, so they have to come in and contribute right away. They can't just get on the government dole. Okay, and if you end the war on drugs, well, then that takes away pretty much all of the incentive for these people who are smuggling drugs over across the border, right? Because if drugs are legal, then you wouldn't need to you know, smuggle them. You wouldn't have this black market. You would take all the juice away from the cartels. So if anybody on the Democratic side wanted to come out and say, hey, we need to end the welfare state, end the war on drugs, then we can have open borders, I would at least be willing to listen to that person. But of course, none of them are saying that. I mean, the Democrats aren't. They want to expand the welfare state greatly, and none of them will even come out and say they're for open borders. And if you're not for open borders, well, then something bad's going to happen no matter what. I mean, you can just make the issue about family separation, but what are you going to do? You're going to detain the parents with their kids? Is this somehow a more humanitarian answer? I mean, it actually might be a worse answer. Who knows? Anyway, none of that's going to happen. We're not gonna end the welfare state. I mean, Donald Trump just signed into law earlier this year the largest spending bill in American history, and our government's going to spend more this year than we've ever spent before. So no cuts coming that way, and ending the war on drugs. Well, good luck with that maniac Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General, who's probably the last human being in public life who still has a Richard Nixon-sized boner for the war on drugs. So anyway, that's not happening anytime soon. So basically, no one on the Democratic side will come out and just say that they're for open borders. No one on the Republican side wants to actually champion separating parents, but that's what's going to happen unless you went with open borders. And if you don't eliminate the welfare state and the war on drugs, open borders will be a nightmare. But anyway, the way this is all going to shake out politically, somehow it seems like Donald Trump's going to escape this. You got the whole mainstream media bashing Donald Trump for something that Obama did too. Oh, and by the way, they're using fake images to do it. So he can just come out and say, see, this is just one more attempt by the lying media to try to ruin me. And you know what? He's not completely wrong about that. And then he can say, oh yeah, I signed this executive order, and I put an end to family separation because I didn't like it. And the same media who's freaking out won't compliment him over doing that, so they won't give him credit for reversing his policy. Oh, and by the way, he can point out the fact that guys like Ted Cruz are actually proposing legislation to stop separating families, and who won't do a deal with him? Chuck Schumer, because they want to ride this issue into the midterms because they're desperate for a winning issue. And, you know, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I thought at first this was going to be a big issue for the Democrats, but more and more it's looking like, just like always, Donald Trump is going to slip his way out of this one. It's like it's like since Donald Trump announced his presidency, the Democrats and the mainstream media have been trying to put out an electrical fire with water. And they just keep dumping more and more water on it, and they just can't realize that you're making this thing bigger and stronger than it ever would have been without you. All right. That's it for today. I'll be back at 3 p.m. tomorrow with a new video. Thanks for watching. Later.